also, this week I decided to revisit a book that I used to inspire my classes actually many, many years ago, probably like 14 years ago, when I was going through a really rough time in my life. And it's this lovely little book. It's called Keep Going, The Art of Perseverance, by a man named Joseph Marshall III. And he's a Native American. And so the story is about a young man whose father dies, and he's pretty devastated by it, you know, even though he was told he had cancer and it wasn't looking good. It was still very shocking to him. And so he was really despairing. And he decided he was going to talk to his grandfather, who he thought was a really wise man. And this is basically their conversation. And so it's nice because each kind of chapter has a little bit of a message for, you know, how we manage to keep ourselves going when life is just really hard, when we're in despair, when we're sad, when, you know, we're let down. And so I thought it would be a good subject for us at this time in our lives. So what I'd like you to do, if you have not already, is to lie down doing your heart opener. And you're just going to listen to me talk a little bit from this book while you're having a chance to counteract all the hunching that much of what we do these days leads us to. So again, across the bottom tips of your shoulder blades, if you want a larger heart opening, you can also just have a blanket line your spine if you want one that's a little more gentle. Just make sure that you don't feel any kind of strain in your neck or your throat. So you want that area of you to be relaxed. And you can breathe in a specific way to help the opening, but you don't have to. If you want to just relax and let your breath find its own rhythm, that's also fine. But if you want to, you can use your inhale to actively expand your torso. So breathing in like you're filling a glass from the bottom up, but from the belly up to the collarbones, and letting the breath in a real conscious way widen your whole rib cage circumferentially. And then your exhale is a passive release. So with your exhalation, you're just letting go of the breath and letting your body also let go. So the young man's name is Jeremy, and his grandfather was known as Old Hawk. And Old Hawk knew that the roads traveled in this life imparted lessons that experientially, emotionally, and spiritually were greater than the number of hills climbed or borders crossed. They were greater than the turns made or the horizons waiting ahead. And he knew that the most important and enduring lessons come from the difficult roads that twist and turn, are narrow and dark, and filled with challenges and obstacles. Roads easily traveled offer no travail and therefore no sense of achievement, because anything easily attained offers little value in return. So Jeremy came to speak with him. And Old Hawk could see, just by looking at his face, that he was troubled. So he asked him how he was doing. And Jeremy said, "Why is life so difficult?" Old Hawk replied, "I'm an old man, and I've seen something of life, but I don't know if there is one answer that will satisfy you. I think there are many answers out there waiting for you to find them. And I do know this, life is not easy, but that is the way it is, and we cannot change it. We can just try to understand." "How can you be so certain of these things?" Jeremy asked. "There are times when I think it would be far easier to accept pain and what life brings rather than try to understand it." And Old Hawk replied, "I know these things because I've traveled a long way down the road we call life. You're still at the beginning. And at the beginning, we don't know a lot. At the end, we have experience to draw on. And my experiences tell me that there is more to life than simply accepting it." And so Jeremy asked about how he became able to learn these lessons. And grandfather said that he talked with his father and grandfather. And Old Hawk said, this is what they told him: "In life there is sadness as well as joy, losing as well as winning, falling as well as standing, hunger as well as plenty, badness as well as goodness. I do not say this to make you despair, but to teach you reality. Life wears two faces, and one is no less real than the other. If everything were the same all the time, there would be no variety, no excitement, no balance. There would be no black to offset white, no sunset to finish the day that began with sunrise, and no warmth to chase away the cold. But that which gives your journey balance throughout this life also brings difficulty. And in the end, it also brings a gift that we often do not see. Life isn't all sadness, and yet without sadness, we would not yearn for joy and strive to find it and treasure it when it comes. And it's also a fact that neither sadness nor joy is with us constantly. And how often one or the other is part of our journey is not always within our control. We all want joy more than sadness, and rare is the person who actually wants sadness at all. Jeremy said, "I will be happy if I never know sadness again. But then I know I'm not the first to wish that, and I won't be the last." And Old Hawk said, "Yes, all of us wish that at one time or another. Because we know that there will be sadness. In part, we acknowledge the reality of sadness, and in part, we reject it. The reality of the sun shining today does not eliminate the reality of gray skies and rain tomorrow. So joy will not eliminate sadness, though one reality may obscure another, it cannot eliminate it. And perhaps in the end, the perspective we can gain is that one reality defines the other. Like losing makes us appreciate winning. When I was a young man," Old Hawk said, "the last wolf in this part of the country was hunted down and killed. The newcomers to the land brought long-held fears of the wolf with them. They thought and still think the wolf was successful because he loved to kill and was good at it. To them, he was evil and had to be killed. they didn't realize that he failed more than he succeeded. He went hungry 8 or 9 times out of 10 because his prey got away. And when he succeeded, that 10th time, he satisfied his hunger. What the others saw as lust for killing was really perseverance. That was the secret of his success. He never quit. Now take a few moments to reflect on how you persevered today, or maybe over the last several days or week. And then give yourself another few moments as you just check in and notice how your body is feeling today, how your mind is doing, how your breath is moving, and how you are on any other dimensions of being, emotionally and otherwise. When you feel complete with that, you can go ahead and bend your knees and roll to your side. You're going to move your blanket out from underneath you and come back onto your back. We'll do a few more things to warm up on the back, and then we'll get up and start moving. So once you're on your back again, take the time to just stretch out fully and just enjoy the feeling of creating length. So hopefully it's kind of approaching the end of your work day or your whatever kind of day you've been having. Take a few deep breaths, stretch fully, and then you can bend your knees and hug them to your chest. Maybe rock a little bit from side to side. So we're going to do a bridge pose variation. So just listen to the instructions to begin. It's simple, but it can be a little challenging because we're going to be using motor coordination and focus as well as movement in our body. So you'll be starting in a position where you'll be lying on the floor with your knees bent, your feet on the floor, kind of lined up by your sit bones, and your arms will just rest by your sides on the floor. Okay, so just listen to the instructions for a moment here. So on your inhale, you'll be lifting your hips off the floor like normal bridge, and you'll be starting by moving just your right arm from your side up in the air, traveling all the way down to the floor behind your head. On your exhale, you'll bring the hips back down. You'll bring the arm back down, and as you finish your exhalation, you'll turn your head to the left. On your next inhale, you'll start again by turning your head back to center and then lifting your left arm and your hips. At the end of your inhale, you'll bring the left arm down, the hips down, and then you'll turn your head to the right. So on every inhale, you're moving one of your arms and your hips. On every exhale, you'll end by turning your head in the direction of the arm that's going to move next. Okay, so whenever you're ready now, you can start this. And Dan, I would take the pillow away and maybe use a blanket. Just use as much support as you need under your head and not more than that, since you're going to be bearing weight on your head. So whenever you're ready, you'll start inhaling, hips up, right arm will go back. As you exhale, hips down, right arm down, and as you're completing your exhale, turn your head left. When you start your next inhale, your head comes back to center. So you're only turning briefly to the side, and then you're turning back to center for the inhale. And just continue alternating the arms, alternating the turn of the head. And so what can make this, like once you've got the sequence down, what makes this, or can make it a little more challenging, is you're trying to move all these parts, 3 moving parts, head, one arm, hips. They're all moving at different rates, but they're all syncing to the rhythm of your breath in some way. So do one more time with each arm moving, but that might mean you do 3 more times, because I want you to end with the left arm moving since we started with the right. So you might do 2 times, or you might do 3 times. And once you've completed that, you can finish up on your back with any kind of movement that seems like a good idea. You could do another full body stretch, knees to chest, windshield wiper knees, knee circles, just any kind of counter pose that seems good after that warm up. And then you're going to make your way up to a standing. Make sure that you have a block nearby, or something that can act like one, and also a strap or something that can act like a yoga strap. So we're going to go through a flow. So I did a flow in some of my classes last week, but not all of them. And so you may have done this before if you were in one of the ones where I did it. I'm going to go through the flow with you the first time. So in addition to hearing my instructions, you can see me doing the poses. And then we'll repeat it again. And the second time, I'll be back up here watching you and giving you the verbal instructions. Now, the one thing that's going to be different is that you're going to want to stand in the center of your mat, but facing the long edge of the mat. So depending on where your camera is, you may want to turn your mat so that you're facing me. And you can see me when I'm on my mat, which is right over there. So Mary and Jack, you guys might just be able to turn your mats and stagger yourself with one behind the other, but so that you can still see. Unless you have another camera in front of you. Okay. So whenever we do flow or vinyasa yoga, the foundation is going to be the breath. So the first thing I want you to do is come into mountain pose, so consciously stand, and then take just a few moments to cultivate a comfortable breath that's nice and long, that's even, and that's smooth. So you don't want to feel like you're straining for it, but a longer breath will ensure that you're not feeling really rushed as we move from pose to pose. The other thing is don't not breathe. So if I give an instruction on your next inhale, lift your arms up, and you're exhaling at the time, finish your exhalation and then inhale. All the poses that we're going to do will be held for somewhere between 2 and 4 breaths, but it might be a little less or a little more depending on how long your breath is. So that's all okay. Just keep breathing. So we're in mountain pose, and you want to stand so that your weight is is centered kind of on your heels, but your whole foot is in contact with the floor. And then after your next exhalation, you're going to inhale. Oops, sorry. I have to get my little sheet sequence. Okay. So after your next exhalation, you're going to inhale, and your arms are going to travel up, and your palms will meet above your head, even if you can't see them, or I can't see them. And then on an exhalation, we're going to bring the arms back out to the side and start to descend into a forward bend. You'll be here for 2 or 3 breaths. Feel free to spread your feet wider apart, let your knees bend, so the release is happening in your hip joint. Now with an inhalation, slide your hands up the shins, extend your spine forward into half forward fold. So the crown of your head is facing forward, face is facing down, and then with an exhale, you're going to release back into forward fold. Now take your hands, and you're going to place your hands on the floor in front of you about shoulder width apart. Shift your weight onto your hands, and then you can step or hop your legs wide. So you can step them wide or hop, and then release into a wide-legged forward bend for another 2 or 3 breaths. When you're ready, you'll use an inhalation to lift all the way back up, and then arms will also rise up and meet, the palms will meet above your head, pyramid pose. And then we're moving from here to a warrior 2. So I have a really wide stance right now, so I'm going to actually take my feet in a little closer. And then you're going to turn your left foot out for warrior 2 with the arms straight out to the side. Make sure to check your knee out and assure that it's not tipping in, that it's tracking straight in line with that foot. And you're pressing out through both legs. So especially your back leg, you want to make sure that straight leg is engaged. From here, we move into side angle pose. So take your back hand to your hip, your front forearm can come down to your thigh. You also have the option of putting your hand on a block here. Take this top shoulder, lift it up, roll it back, and then extend your top arm in the direction of your head over the ear. If this is hard to do, you have some modifications. So you could, if your shoulder just is very unhappy with that, you can have your arms straight up. If it's just hard to get your arm over this way, take it a little bit forward, and then see if you can open up a little more through your chest. Now from here, we'll come into a lunge, and lunge will just be pretty brief. So I'm just going to turn, facing this foot, and then on an inhale, I'm going to take my forward leg and take it all the way back and up to a one-legged dog. 2 or 3 breaths here. And then whenever you are ready, you'll use another inhale to bring that leg all the way up between your hands to the floor for pigeon pose. So depending on your knees, there are a few modifications you can make. So bringing the knee in line with the hip and bringing your lower leg back that way, rather than having it more out like that. That's one thing you can do. You can also take a block and place it under the forward leg buttock. But you want your hips to be squared to the floor and your extended leg to be centered. And then we're going to do a flowing pigeon. So with your breath, you'll be inhaling as you extend up and exhaling as you release back down. 6 breaths. So inhaling up And exhaling as you come down. Now, once you finish your 6 breaths, you're going to come back up to an upright position. If you've got a block under your hip, you're going to move it out of the way. You're going to sit down on that left buttock. And then you're going to pull your back leg up a little bit so both knees are bent and your legs are separated about 90 degrees here. And then once you're in this position, we're going to add a twist. So I'm going to twist towards, you're going to twist towards your left leg. So put the opposite arm somewhere on the thigh. This hand goes right by the hip, lift up, and then start to twist a little bit towards behind you, wherever that behind you is. Again, 2 or 3 breaths. And then we're going to come into, and again, modifications here. So if you can, I'm going to show you from the side here in a second, but you'll be facing me. But you can do sitting back on your heels, like so. You can do sitting back on your heels with a block. We're only going to stay here about 2 breaths, so you don't have to worry about we're going to be here like forever and ever. If bending your knee like this is just not an option for you, then have the tops of your feet down, come into puppy dog, and then just see how far you can go back. And you're just going to do what your knees are capable of doing. So no harm to the body, no force to your body. We take 2 breaths here. And then from here, we'll come up off the feet, off the heels. You're going to take your hands back to the floor, about shoulder width apart again. And then lift your knees up. And again, you can step apart or you can hop apart, your choice, and release into standing wide-legged forward bend. 2 or 3 breaths here. And then we come all the way up, arms meeting above our head to pyramid pose, and then move into warrior 2 on the second side. So I make my stance be a little narrower here, and then I'm turning the opposite leg open and bringing both arms straight out here to the side. So legs are active, you're pushing out through both legs. Your arms are active, you're drawing in to the shoulder sockets, but also extending out and breathing. So about 3 or 4 breaths here. And then we move into side angle pose. So taking your backhand to the hip, forearm to the thigh, or again, you can place your hand next to your leg on a block or on the floor. Roll this top shoulder out, and then extend through this arm. So again, modifications are to move your arm a little bit forward, like that, or to have it be straight up towards the ceiling, as well as angled over the ear. Oh, you can also just keep your hand on your hip. So none of those other things work. And then from here, we move into lunge briefly. And then from lunge to one-legged dog. So I take the front leg and I swing it up and back. A few breaths here, and then I bring that leg all the way up to pigeon. And again, you can make this leg more straight, bring this foot in. You can put a blanket or a block under this hip. you know, whatever makes it possible for you to come into something like this. And then we do flowing pigeon. So now you'll be inhaling as you're upright and exhaling as you come down. 6 times, 6 breaths. Inhaling up and exhaling as you fold forward. Whenever you've finished your 6 breaths, you'll come to an upright position again, and now sit down on your right buttock and rearrange your legs so that both knees are bent to some degree and the legs are somewhere, the thighs are about 90 degrees apart. And then we move into a twist. So inhale to create length in the spine, exhale as you revolve. 2 or 3 breaths here. And then moving from there to hero pose. I didn't mention last time, but if this feels pretty easy for you to do, you can also separate your heels and sit between them. And then just a couple breaths seated here. Just a couple of breaths, and then we come back to our hands on the floor and lift our knees up and step or hop, the legs wide apart, releasing to wide-legged forward bend. Here's my predator. When you're ready, you'll make your way all the way up. Once more to pyramid pose. And then from here to downward facing dog. So getting into dog any way that makes sense to you. You can turn either direction, doesn't matter. But make sure that your belt is nearby now. We're going to use that for a shoulder stretch in a few moments. So enjoying downward dog for 4 or 5 breaths maybe. And then you'll walk your hands and feet towards each other. So coming into a forward bend with the legs closer, just regular Uttanasana. And that's when you're going to find your belt. So you want to take that buckle end in one hand, and then have your hands about hip-ish width apart. We're going to bring, or they can be wider apart. You're going to bring the arms up, squeeze the elbows in, the shoulder blades in together, and then release overhead. Again, you can take your arms wider apart on the belt. You might find that gives you a little more freedom in the stretch, that your arms might be able to go farther. You can also make yourself challenge a little more by taking your hands a little closer. And then after a few breaths in this position, you'll release the arms behind you, set the belt aside, inhale, and reach all the way up. And close the pose with your hands at your heart. So that's the sequence. So we'll go through it one more time. And this time I can watch you guys do it. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. So I'm going to assume that means no. So come into mountain pose. And then give yourself a moment to connect to your breath. And then after your next exhalation, go ahead and inhale, both arms all the way up. Let the palms meet together above your head. And then with your next exhalation, hinge at your hip joint, folding all the way forward to Uttanasana. Again, remember you can have your feet wider apart and your knees more bent. The more important thing than having straight legs is being able to bend from your hip joint and have an extended spine. On your next inhale, lift up, sliding your hands to the tops of the shins, extending your spine forward, so half forward fold. And then exhaling back over onto the floor. And from here, after a breath or two, you're going to place your hands shoulder width apart. So flat on the floor, shoulder width apart, and then step or hop your feet apart. And again, in this forward bend, you also can have your knees bent, if that makes it easier for you to bend from your hip joint. Enjoy several breaths here in the wide-legged forward bend. When you're ready, you'll use an inhale to extend through your heart and head and come all the way up to standing, arms out to the side, and then they lift up again and meet, palms together above your head. Pyramid pose. And from here now we're going to move into warrior two. So go ahead and turn your left foot to the left, center your spine, and remember you can readjust your feet if needed, but active legs, so really pressing out, especially that back leg. You want to be engaging your thigh muscles here. Your spine is extended up. And you want to feel your shoulder blades engaged on your back because you're drawing the arm bones into the shoulder sockets, but then balance that drawing in with expansion. So find the sweet spot. Now, with your next exhale, you're going to move into side angle pose. So placing your forearm on your thigh or a hand on the floor or on the block. Roll that top shoulder back, so really opening up through the chest, and then extend your top arm as straight as possible in any of those modifications. So hand on hip, arms straight up from the shoulder, or a little forward of your chest, but extended in the direction of your head. So any of those options that are best for you, you choose. Now, when you're ready, you're going to exhale into lunge. So both arms come down to the floor. And then with an inhale, you're going to sweep your front leg back and up into the air to one-legged dog. And then 2 or 3 breaths in one-legged dog, pushing evenly through both of your shoulder blades, trying to keep your hips squared. So we're not doing a turnout with this one-legged dog. Your hips are squared to the floor. And make sure that your head is framed by your arms. So your ears are about where your upper arms are. Yeah, just to make sure your neck is nice and long. Then when you're ready, you'll inhale that leg all the way up and forward for pigeon pose using any of those modifications. Yep, supporting that hip if needed, and then start your flowing pigeon. So exhaling as you release towards the floor and inhaling as you flow up. So about 6 breaths here. Now, whenever you are ready, you can come upright, and then you're going to sit that hip on the floor and arrange your legs so you've got about 90 degrees between your thighs, and both knees are bent to some degree. And then you'll twist in the direction of your forward leg. After 2 or 3 breaths in the twist, you'll come back around and then make your way to either hero pose, sitting on your heels, sitting between your heels, or sitting in any other appropriate position that doesn't make you cry. Yeah, so we're only going to stay for a couple of breaths in this. I know this can be a very challenging pose, even if your knees do bend that way. It's a big stretch for the top of the ankle and for the thighs. When you're ready, you'll go ahead and bring your hands back down to the floor. And then you're going to turn sideways if you're not already sideways, and hop or step your feet wide apart. Dropping into the forward bend with wide legs, you'll take several breaths. And then when you are ready, you'll use an inhale to come up to pyramid pose. So you're going to lift up with a long, strong spine, arms rise up, palms meet above your head. And now we move into warrior two on the second side. So turning your other foot out. And then legs really active. So Terry, pull your torso back a little bit so your torso, your spine is more centered. No, your legs are good. Legs are good. Just your upper body. Imagine me holding onto your left hand and pulling back a little bit. So your whole torso moves towards your back leg just a little bit. Yeah, so your spine is centered here. And then with an exhalation, you'll move into side angle pose. So bring the forearm either to the thigh or your hand to the floor or to a block. Roll your top shoulder out, so get that extra opening through the chest, and then stretch out your top arm into whatever arm position is appropriate for you today. Taking 3 or 4 breaths in side angle pose. And then when you are ready, you'll transition to lunge, bringing both hands to the floor, lifting your back foot heel. And then with an inhale, sweep that front leg all the way back and up to one-legged dog. Once you get that leg up there, so square your hips. So your leg can go higher if you turn your hips up, but we're doing a different variation here. So squared hips, and your lifted leg is facing the floor. The top of the leg is facing the floor. Okay, when you're ready, take that leg all the way down and up to pigeon pose. Coming into whatever kind of a pigeon you can make user-friendly for your body today. Hips are squared to the floor, back leg is also centered on the floor, and then you start your flowing pigeon. So doing about 6 breaths, rising up on your inhale, and flowing down, bowing down on your exhale. Now, when you are finished with your 6 breaths, then you're going to sit your forward legs buttock on the floor, and then rearrange those legs. So you've got about 90 degrees angle between your two thighs, and both knees are bent to some degree. Once you've arranged your legs, then move into the twist. So you're twisting towards the forward leg. Yeah, so see if you can move your left arm jack back a little bit closer to your hip. Yeah, to try, yeah, there you go. Okay, if that, if something doesn't feel right that I ask you to do, you get to decide. You do not have to do everything I say. I make suggestions. Okay. Yes, feel free to just do what you know your body can do best. Okay, once you've had a couple of breaths in your twist, you're going to come back around and make your way to either sitting on your heels, sitting between your heels, or doing any other position that honors your body as it is in this moment. So just a few breaths here in this seated pose. And then you'll be moving from here back to the wide-legged forward bend. So placing your hands, stepping or hopping your feet wide apart. After a few breaths in the wide-legged forward bend, you'll make your way to downward facing dog. Again, you can face whatever way you want to in your dog pose. And just make sure you've got your strap nearby. So we're going to take 4 or 5 breaths in downward dog. From there, we'll be moving into standing forward bend. So you'll walk your hands and feet together. But take the time you want in dog. And then give yourself a couple of breaths in forward fold. And then take your strap, if you hold the buckle end in one hand, and then have your hands about hip width apart. But then you can always change how much belt you use. When you first start to lift up, you want to squeeze your shoulder blades in towards each other, but then as your arms come forward, let them relax. So let gravity help you here. But first you've got to get your shoulder blades back, because if you're rounding your shoulders, you're rounding your chest or closing your chest up, it's going to make the stretch really difficult to do. And you can experiment with how much space you give yourself with the belt. So going wider, you'll probably find you have a little more mobility for your arms to go towards the floor. When you're ready, you'll take that belt back behind you. Just drop it to the side. And then with an inhalation, when you're ready, you'll come all the way back up again. Arms rise up, palms meet over your head, and then you bring it all home to your heart. Okay, well done. Now we're going to move into some balancing poses. So we're going to do a 4-pose sequence, and you may want to keep that belt handy and also your block handy. So I'm going to show you the 4 poses, and then you can do them. But just have a look-see before you do them first. And by the way, it is also fine if you have a piece of furniture, that like a wall or a piece of furniture that you can touch, or even a wall behind you for these poses. If that would be useful, feel free to take advantage of those things. So the first pose is a hand to foot variation, where we take the leg out to the side here. And then from here, and you can also hold your leg anywhere you want or use a belt. And then from here, we're going to move into a tree pose. So you can take your foot, again, anywhere you want to. You can do whatever you want with your arms. So that's the first 2. And then the second 2, you do another hand to foot pose, but this time you're stretching the leg out in front of you. Okay, same thing. You can hold anywhere on the leg, but here's the thing. With that pose, what I often see is if you can't get your legs straight, people start doing this. So thigh pops forward, you're rounding your back. What I would rather see is this, and not have your leg all the way straight, but see this. I want this straight. No popping the leg forward. Okay, so from there, we move into eagle pose. And this is where the block can be helpful. Can you move that into the way? Okay, so my balancing leg is going to be my right one. And so from the hand to foot, then I'm going to hinge forward, cross my leg over, and put my foot on the block. So I'm going to have both legs on something as I come into the pose. So this is a hard one because your balancing leg is bent. So that's why giving it some help to get into the pose is a good idea. Whatever your top leg is, the opposite arm is the top arm. So now I'm in the pose, and now I can start working on balance, taking my foot off the block. Okay, so the block is a really nice tool for being able to get into the full pose where your leg isn't crying. Okay, so let's try the first one. So hand to foot pose. You can pick whatever leg you want to start with, but the leg's going to externally rotate out to the side. You can hold on to the leg anywhere you can reach it, and your leg does not have to be perfectly straight. So just see what you can do with it. And your other arm, you might find it helps you to stretch it to the side, or you want to take it straight up, or you can have it anywhere you want. All right, nice. Now, when you've had enough fun there, then you can, it's absolutely fine to put your foot back on the floor, by the way. But you can also then move into tree pose right from hand to foot. So it depends on how it's unfolding today. Yeah, so again, feel free to use any available surfaces that might help you get into the pose, because like if you have something like a wall behind you or a piece of furniture you can touch, use that to get into the pose, and then see if you can shift away and find your balance. So, you know, that's absolutely fine to do. Okay, whenever you've had enough fun with your tree pose, then you're going to move into that second little sequence, which is hand to foot again, but with your leg out straight. And so with that one, having something behind you can be especially helpful, because most people find it a little easier to stretch their leg out to the side than straight ahead. So if you can hold on to something, so to make sure that your torso is upright, so you don't want to be hunching forward, popping the thigh. Yep, that's looking good, you guys. And then for eagle pose, so the thing that makes eagle pose so challenging is that your balancing leg has got to be bent. So it's not, the pose will not work if your leg is straight. Your other leg won't stay on top of it. So you have to lower your hips like you're sitting in a chair. So having a block to put your foot on helps you to do that. Yeah, because like Jack, right now, you're not bending that knee. So if you can use something to help you, whether, you know, back up to your door behind you, but you've got to bend your knees like you're sitting in a chair. And then you can cross that leg over, and it's a tight cross of the legs. And then once your legs are crossed over, you want to internally rotate that thigh. There's a wild eagle in Pittsburgh. So when you get the leg crossed over, the opposite arm is the top arm. Yeah, so Angela, you want to switch the cross of your arms? There you go. Okay, and whenever you've had enough fun with one side, then you get to have even more fun with the next side. Yep, you can do a happy dance in between. Okay, and I think the way I told you this time was you went through all 4 poses on one side first. Is that what you did? Okay, so if that's what you did, then you're going to do all 4 on the second side. If you did it different, like if you did the first 2 on both sides, then just do the second 2 on both sides. So just in case. So Mary, I'm going to show you another way you can modify to see if it might work better for the eagle pose. And of course, this is good for anybody who wants to do it. But you would find a wall, and you just lean your butt to the wall so that you can have your knees bent to some degree, but you don't have to bend them a lot. And then you cross over here. Okay, and then you can do it like this with the butt to the wall. But the other thing you can do is once you're in, your legs are like this, you can push off from the wall and then see if you can balance there. And so here you can see I don't have a really big bend to my knee, but I have enough of a bend. But that can be a good way to see where you can go if you've got something that you can use like that wall. Okay, whenever you've finished your the second side of whatever you were doing, feel free to do any other kind of counter pose that seems like a good idea, any kind of movement. We're going to finish up with some work, some core work. But I just want you to have a chance to just do anything else right here after doing all those challenging balancing poses. Okay, so what we're going to do next is we're going to do a couple of variations of baby chaturanga. So I'm going to show you them, and then we'll be ready for Shavasana. So the first is just standard baby chaturanga, or forearm plank. So from Sphinx pose, you can come up to your knees and then lift your knees, walk your feet in, and you start here. And then we move into the first variation, which is to bring the knee towards the elbow on each side. Knee towards the elbow. We'll do that a couple of times. And then we're going to do a twist here. So you're going to turn like a side plank and then do the other side here. And then we'll finish that. We'll do one other thing, and then we'll be getting ready for a nice relaxation. So when you're ready, you're going to come onto your belly. And you want to place your forearms parallel to each other with the crease of your elbow in front of your shoulder. So you got to move your elbows forward. And then the first thing you can do is just come up onto your knees. But if you're on your knees need to be a little bit behind your hips. Okay. And then you can lift your knees up. Okay, so the idea here is to not have your butt way high in the air, but to have it be kind of level with your shoulders. However, you can lift it up if you need to. Okay, you can also put your knees down on the floor instead of having them off the floor. Okay, so go ahead and come on down from that. Take just a moment with your knees down. And then we'll come into the second variation. So when you're ready, you're going to come up again and then see if you can take one knee towards the elbow on that side and then take it back and then do the other side. You can do it maybe 2 times or 3 times. So you can stay up through this whole process, but please only do that if that's a really good idea for your body. Otherwise, come down and take a short rest. And then the last one, when you're ready, you'll come back up and then you'll turn onto the little toe side of one foot with the other foot stacked on top, or you could step it, in front or behind. So this twist is pretty challenging. And you're then going to the other side. And then once you've done that, then you can shift your hips back towards your heels for a extended child pose, a puppy dog. You can also, if you want to lift up into a downward dog, you can feel free to do that. And then when you're ready, you'll come onto your back and arrange yourself comfortably for relaxation. So allow your breath to find its own rhythm and give yourself at least a few moments to scan through your body, to make any adjustments to your clothing or position. or any props you might be using. And focus on the feeling of the weight of your body, just letting go. And the points of support. So please just continue to rest for a few moments. Old Hawk says, difficult experiences, whether they're sadness, loss, hunger, poverty, illness, or death, rarely occur because you've invited them into your life. But when life does place hardship in your path, it always offers a chance to learn strength. That is the unseen gift. It's not easy, but you can make it so by living through it one moment at a time, one day at a time. And at the end of those moments and those days, you will grow stronger. That will be your gift. The fact is, the sun does not always shine. Gentle breezes can grow into tornadoes. Too much rain can lead to flood. Too much sunshine causes drought. Life is life. It is what it is. It offers no certainties except that it will go on with or without you. The sun will rise and set every day. Though clouds obscure your perception and you do not see it coming up and going down, it will do so nonetheless. So do the seasons follow their unerring cycle, waiting for no one or nothing. Neither waiting nor caring if you join them, but never denying your choice to do so. They will go. They will go on, and so must you, because your journey is waiting, and your journey is where you will learn reality and balance. Reality and balance? Asked Jeremy. Yes, Old Hawk says. If there is truthfulness, there are lies. If there is generosity, then there is greed. When there is hate, there is love. There is war, there is peace. There is despair, and there is hope. There is grief and comfort, defeat and victory, weariness and rest, death and birth. It's only natural for you to think and to wish and sometimes even pray that bad things do not happen in your life. You must learn that the answers to those wishes and prayers have already been given to you before you wished and prayed. There is love to overcome hate. There is generosity that can diminish greed. Truthfulness can reveal the lies in the same way the wind dries the flood and rains end the drought. That is life. That is what is. So begin to move your attention outward, to wiggle your toes and fingers, to begin to do some stretches, to move around. Whenever you're ready, you can move onto your side. Just curl up on your right side for a few more moments. And as you're ready, you can make your way up to sitting. And let's close our practice by taking our hands together and bowing to our own unique individual spirit and soul, our unique self. And then we bow to each other, to the light that connects us. Namaste.